Mr. Pasick, and it is correctly pronounced Pasick, is that correct?
It's Pasick.
Pasick. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I want to make sure I get it right for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, it's not a problem at all. So, let me start off with, I know you're with the Libertarian Party. You're 30 years old. There's been a few articles I see that have come out. Actually, one article by Syracuse.com since we spoke on Monday when we set up this interview for today. And I see you were on the radio this morning on WUTQ. But for my readers and listeners who have not had an opportunity to see or hear either of those, could you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. I was born in this district. I was born in Utica. Was raised on family farm property. Well, I should say for a short time, raised on family farm property. We all moved to North Carolina in the mid-'90s due to economic conditions in the region. So, as young as I was, I suppose I sort of had resolved to make it back to this area because I love this property that we live on. The family property has been in our family since 1922. So I have a strong connection to this region and to this property specifically. But after spending time in high school, etc., in North Carolina, went to school just outside of Philadelphia, and again, I made it a point to make my way back to this region because again, I care deeply about this area.
Okay.
And in terms of hobbies, etc., just personal interest, I guess. Given that it is farm property, tried my hand, I guess, at hop farming. There's a deep history of hop farming in this area, dating back to the 1800s. So it was interesting. We actually found some hops growing wild on the property, and we've been trying to propagate those. So it's been a really fun hobby to do, and I think it's as more and more of the beer industry takes hold in this region, I think it's being part of something that's growing, literally and figuratively.
Okay. Just to be clear, when you say the area you live in, we're talking about the town of Schuler, which is in Herkimer County. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's actually pronounced Schuyler.
Schuyler. Oh, I'm sorry. Every town in upstate New York, it's all... everyone mispronounces them every so often.
Yeah, well, the city of Utica actually, way back when, was the site of Fort Schuyler. So before it changed its name to Utica, the name of the city was Fort Schuyler, Old Fort Schuyler.
Old Fort Schuyler. Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure that was clear as well. So let me start off with one of the questions that I've asked all of the candidates I've interviewed so far. I've asked them this one question, which is consistent, and I want to get your answer on this as well before we get into everything else. You're familiar with the Omnibus Spending Bill, correct?
You have to provide some extra detail into that. I mean, I know that omnibus bills include, a great deal of different issues. So, I mean, is there an issue within the omnibus bill that you would be specifically asking about?
Well, I will be, but you're familiar with the one that was passed, the Ryan Omnibus Bill, which was passed on December of 2015.
Not directly familiar with it, but I suppose I can speak to some of those issues.
Okay. Well, it was a comprehensive bill, 1.1 trillion in spending that was authorized by Congress, averting a shutdown of the government. Within that bill, there were several provisions. In particular, there were tax credits for the solar and wind energy industry. There was the funding of Planned Parenthood, and also the expansion of H-2B visas, which would allow foreigners to get jobs through that program. These were contentious items for many voters, and would you have voted for that?
this is why I believe this is difficult, is because I have differing opinions on each of the items that you listed.
Answer it as you want.
So
you can go point by point. Go ahead.
Right. So let's begin. You said tax credits.
Yes.
For solar and wind, right?
That's correct.
My opinion on that is while I endorse, the movement and development of alternative energy, I believe that there is, sentiment within voters in general, and I would say particularly within this district, against, the idea of crony capitalism and of corporate welfare. So with that in mind, I think the degree to which the federal government really buoys certain industries and to a certain extent, to the personal benefit of some legislators, is troubling to voters. So, again, this is not a knock on the solar and wind industry. Rather, it is a statement on what level federal government should have in determining which industries are successful and which are not.
Okay.
So this is something that I will be campaigning on, is that if we were to reduce the amount of federal regulation, and if we really examine how federal regulation is written, to a certain degree, and I would argue to a large degree, it's written by major corporations, such that they are the only ones that are able to comply with those regulations, and thus they stifle competition in the marketplace. So, if we were to reduce federal regulations in a number of different areas, and I'm not saying, an all-out, evisceration of all regulation. What I'm saying is overly complex regulation that stifles entrepreneurism and small business creation is needed, because the entrepreneurial spirit in this country and in this district, we have people that are disheartened, that are seeing the hurdles that they have to jump over, seeing the red tape that people have to go through in order to start a business, in order to be an entrepreneur. They lose the incentive to begin, and that's a detriment to our country, and particularly to this district, that we don't have those innovators, we don't have those thinkers that are, putting themselves out there. So I'll move to the immigration portion of this.
Well, before you do that, I'm sorry.
I guess this sort of ties together.
Well, before you do, because you said something in there that I'm not clear on, and I want to get clarity because it didn't make sense. You mentioned that these are regulations that benefit the legislators, the legislature. How do you make that claim? I don't understand. How is this, the wind credits, the solar, and any of these credits by the government benefiting the members of Congress?
I'm not talking about the solar and wind, because admittedly, I'm not well versed enough to speak to these individual credits. What I'm talking about is a general course of action, or a general standard operating procedure, if you will, of what we see as a symbiosis between big government and big corporation to the mutual benefit of both of them. Okay,
but you made the
I'm talking about a general trend, and not necessarily this individual case.
Right, and speaking about it in the general trend, I'm just trying to understand. You're saying that this benefits the members of Congress directly from your statement. And I'm trying to understand how. Do you have an example?
I suppose it's in terms of re-election. So it doesn't escape voters that some of these corporations that are again buoyed by certain federal legislation, that these are some of the corporations that fund the legislators that ensured that this legislation was passed.
Okay, can you give me an example of that?
That's how it's mutually beneficial.
Okay, and what would be an example of that? Just so that we know what you're talking about.
understood. I'm not going to, pick apart any individual.
No, I'm not asking you to. Many people aren't familiar with politics, and so I asked for the example only so that they have something to reference. But we can go forward if you want. That's fine. I'm just trying to clarify.
Yeah, I think voters are pretty well aware of the symbiosis of which I speak. Is that
okay?
To get to the reason why I'm running, this is I believe where voters stand right now. Is that are their interests represented in law? What we've seen is a stagnation of middle class income for the past 40 years. What we've also seen is a more and more of a concentration of wealth to the very top of the income distribution. So given that we've had such incredible income disparities to this point, I think voters are disenchanted or disheartened, to use that word again, that to what extent are the people that they're voting for actually representing their interests in law?
Okay, well, there's a couple things you said there. I just want to make you are a libertarian, but one of the things you were just mentioning about the income disparity is one of the top issues promoted by Democrats generally, and especially in the presidential race right now. That is one of the key themes of both Hillary Clinton and Senator Bernie Sanders. Can you clarify how is the Libertarian Party views separate of the Democratic Party issues, or even the Republicans?
The difference is the remedy. I believe the remedy is for big government to be reduced, for the government to get out of the way of small business creators, so that a middle class can thrive. So small business creation, so new businesses are the primary drivers of new employment. So if we're creating an environment in which new businesses are not able to be created, then what we're seeing is, again, a stifling of entrepreneurism and essentially a stifling of a free market economic system. So one thing that libertarianism espouses is an actual free market. So the question is, do we exist right now in a system that is a true free market? And I would argue no. By way of, again, crony capitalism and corporate welfare, those things need to be reformed, and they're driven again by big government.